Okay, it's 10 o'clock. Just a reminder, anybody that speaks, please step up to the podium because we are live streamed, so we can give everybody an opportunity to hear what you have to say. But with that, we'll call the meeting to order and rise for the pledge.
I would like to make it so the flag of the United States of America. To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
You have public forum. If anybody wishes to speak, now is your opportunity. You get 3 minutes. Just state your name and.
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Teresa Dawson, and I just have a kind of a sober statement this morning. In our state legislature, there's a revision that is going to be voted on for Minnesota Statute 2022-363A.03. This law is in the sexual orientation statute for our state. The revision takes out a piece of the legislation that prevented adults with sexual attraction to children to be considered a sexual orientation. If this revision passes, and unfortunately this administration has made it clear that they will push many such perversions through, pedophilia will now be a protected sexual orientation in Minnesota. Pornography in books for children, perversion and confusion taught in media and education, and now exposing our children to those who could harm them and protecting those who could. Does this not sound like madness? Matthew 18:6 says, "But whoso shall offend one of these little ones that believeth in me, it better for him or her that a millstone were hanged about his neck and he were drowned in the depth of the sea." The Creator has given children to parents to raise. Why? Because they are vulnerable, needing protection, guidance, nurturing, and education. It is the responsibility of parents and anyone who acts in loco parentis to nurture a noble and morally good conscience in them. To leave children with drug addicts or in a bar or in a brothel for their upbringing and education is ludicrous and is considered abuse and neglect, which are punishable crimes. Yet we are sending our children to public schools with our tax dollars that are teaching them no better moral virtues than bars and brothels. We as a people are guilty of wounding the tender consciences of these children, and now we are exposing them to further harm by allowing pedophiles to not be discriminated against if they seek a public education job. Can we say we are nurturing a good conscience or an evil conscience in these children? Could you stand before God and say you have done all you can to protect the innocence of the children in your country and in this county? I do not say that you as commissioners have voted for these things or even agree with them, but have you vehemently stood against them? I fear we are no longer a state or a country that is run by principle, but only by the money that flows from the state and federal government, forgetting that those are the taxes that come from us, the people. You are now an elected official, entrusted to take a stand for your constituents who have entrusted you with the sacred office. Are the monies to fund our projects the only things we stand for? What about the money sent to schools now to pay for perversion to be taught? I believe the greatest project any people can take on is instilling virtue and truth in our children, which is the heritage we leave to them. If this state and country have any chance of surviving as a good people, we need to take this revolution of evil ideology on and turn this ship around. We need to call evil evil and stop pussyfooting around it. Someone needs to start standing now. The evidence of the moral character of a nation is seen in how it cares for its most vulnerable. This is what we do right now to our most vulnerable. Abortion, confusion about who they are, gender transition surgeries before they're able to truly even understand who they are as a person. Scientifically, we know a child's brain is not fully developed until they are nearly 25 years old. Exposure to things that wound their conscience and take away their innocence, pornographic books that makes having sex with everything look like it's normal and good, perverting God's design for sex to be a sacred privilege of marriage.
Your time is up.
Can I pay for my time, please?
You want to speak?
No, I want her to finish.
I just have a few more statements.
Okay.
Exposure to those who could take advantage of them in the name of gender equality. This is what we have done to expose our most vulnerable. How would you like to grow up in a society that no longer protects you and expects you to make adult decisions before your brain is even fully developed? Is this not abuse? One more thing, just because a minority saying they need to be protected for what they believe does not make it right, especially if that group seeks to wound the consciences of the weak and vulnerable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else?
Thank you, Teresa.
Anybody
Yeah,
else?
I would speak at the public forum if I could. I use this microphone or do you want me to go up there?
Why don't you go up here, JJ?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, we spoke before this. There was a book and Terry's on the library board. We're all aware of it. And that's when we found out that there's a minimum amount of funding, right, David? That we have to give the Central Library Board,
Maintenance of effort, state requirement.
right? And we give above and beyond that.
Correct.
Okay. Since then, are you aware, Terry, there's more books out there? The one that they wouldn't move, they wouldn't negotiate with us, they would consider doing nothing. Now there's more books. I have the titles of them and I have information for you. And then also there's a whole list of new history books. They're actually trying to rewrite history, most recent history, presidential history, things that I certainly remember in my time around. But I guess I would just like to let you know that it's me, dear, what you're talking about. I'm a father, I have kids. And I would just like to have the rest of the board, someday we could have a conversation of figuring out if we can't do anything about the library board, we can't do anything about the books. Why do we have to pay extra? If we don't agree with this, and ultimately it comes from the taxpayers. That's who I represent. And at least give the minimum, because they're not given the minimum. They get by with one book. There's another book. There's another. I have a library right in my phone. I can't remember the last time I've been to a library. And another new thing at the library was what, drug overdoses. Now they want Narcan. What does the library attract? That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? If not, we'll move on to the agenda. I see we've got a couple of additions.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, if we could add consent agenda item number 4C, new hire for Scott Pearson. And if we could add regular agenda item 1A, Central Minnesota Emergency Medical Services Resolution 2023-29. And if we could add regular agenda item 3.1, jail programs volunteer services recognition.
I'll make a motion to adopt agenda as amended.
Thank you, second.
Thank you. We got a motion by Lovegren, seconded by Waldham to approve adopt the agenda. Any additions? Not. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approve the minutes of April 18th, 2023 County Board Minutes and Summary for Publication, and April 25th, 2023 Special Meeting Committee of the Whole Minutes.
So move, Mr. Chair. Second.
Motion by Ludwig, second by Moore. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And minutes of boards, reports and correspondence, Pine County Zoning Board minutes of January 26, 2023. Pine County Land Surveyor monthly report for April of 2023. And notice of intent to local government units and workplace amendment. Hinkley Wellhead Protection Program, April 11th, 2023.
I'll move it. Second. Ludwig.
Motion by Moore, second by Ludwig. Any discussion? Not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Move on to the consent agenda. You've had those items in front of you for several days. Any discussion on those?
I'll move the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion by Lovegren, seconded by Moore. Any discussion? Not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And now we go to our regular agenda, and Miriam Larson from the Regional EMS Coordinator will give us a little brief update.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Marion Larson, and I am the Regional EMS Coordinator. And the Regional EMS region, I guess, as Central Minnesota, we cover 11 counties. So we're the big donut hole of Minnesota. I like to tell folks I cover everybody from Albertville to Walker, Wadena to Wisconsin, and Pine County is my easternmost border. I serve 234 agencies, 15 of which are in Pine County. And so those agencies that I serve, if you had a heart attack or your child was hurt or injured and you called 911, all of those agencies who would come to your house or your lake or your business, those are my stakeholder agencies. The region provides what I like to consider two main opportunities to support our regions, our agencies. We do some emergency readiness and we provide some direct support to agencies. Our direct support includes training reimbursement dollars. We offer equipment grants. We have done a lot of naloxone distribution. We've gotten a grant from the state of Minnesota. In Pine County alone, we've provided 280 plus doses of naloxone, primarily to your sheriff's office to use while they're out in the community responding to medicals. This past fall, we also worked with the University of Minnesota to do the statewide AED project. That means any squad car across the state that wanted new AEDs for their entire fleet of squads was eligible. So we connected with every law enforcement agency within our 11 counties and told them, yes, this is a real project. Yes, there is no cost to you. And we highly encourage you to participate. After we did that, we only had 2 police or law enforcement agencies within our region not participate. They opted to go a different route. We have over 8,000 new AEDs across our state that are being delivered, and this helps increase cardiac arrest survival. I am a central hub for people who have questions about their education. You have to be certified in the state of Minnesota to be emergency medical responder or an emergency medical technician. A lot of those folks are volunteers and they need to know how to become certified and how to keep that credentialing. And so I try to connect them with services and education opportunities to make sure that we have trained and educated folks. We also run the regional critical incident stress management team. In the past, I think it was 15 years, Pine County has had 37 debriefing requests for your agencies and first responders. And those can be anything from a car accident to a cardiac arrest to a house fire or pediatric death. If there's something traumatic that happens, we have a group of volunteers who will come out to their agency and help them process that incident, because we want to make sure that we have mentally resilient responders, because that helps with our recruitment and retention. We've also done a couple of time sensitive things. We called it Operation Super Soaker at the beginning of COVID. When we didn't know exactly what we could do, we provided handheld sanitation devices that looked like old school super soakers to every ambulance service in our region so that they could make sure that the back of their rigs, whether they were a small volunteer agency with 7 people or, Mayo Clinic ambulance with 7,000 employees, everybody had the opportunity to have a disinfected, appropriate ambulance. In addition to all that direct support that we provide to our agencies and to our responders, the region serves a big emergency readiness position. During the civil unrest in the metro, we provided regular situational updates to our ambulance services. And while we might not think that the civil unrest that's happening down in Minneapolis would impact central Minnesota, it really does, because we have a number of hospitals who do direct transfers down to Minneapolis and St. Paul area. And the last thing I want is for our small volunteer ambulance service to end up in the middle of civil unrest in Minneapolis when they're taking somebody from our local communities down there. So we provide them with lots of information. Same with when the Super Bowl happened and when we've had flooding and fires. When your local ambulance service can't handle all of the call volume and they can't have their mutual aid help them, that's where the region comes in. I'm able to connect them with other EMS services across our region to help lighten that load. We had a Sherco coal plant fire about 10 years ago. And while it wasn't a critical disaster, it was very labor intensive to have EMS workers on scene for days on end while they fought that fire and tried to put it out. It overwhelmed the local ambulance service. And so we had folks come from Wadena and from St. Cloud down to the Becker area to help lighten the load. The region has struggles. We've struggled for a really long time. And it's around our funding. We're currently funded through the state of Minnesota. We get general fund dollars and then seatbelt citation fines. And that's what we are expected to both sustain our operations and provide direct services to our EMS services. Dollar for dollar, we saw more in 1989 than we did in fiscal year 21. If we adjust for inflation, it's about 3 times less. The price of eggs and the price of milk is certainly more now than it was in 1989. And so the region's really having a hard time. There was a silver lining. We did have 2 bills, one in the House and one in the Senate, to provide the regions with extra funding that got held over for possible inclusion in the omnibus bill. I haven't heard that the omnibus bill has passed yet. So I'm still waiting with bated breath. We try to be increasingly optimistic that things will shake out for the regions, but we also need to be realistic. Our board is investigating all types of fundings, whether that is local funding or additional dollars coming from the state. On our board is Commissioner Ludwig, and then Commissioner Waldham is the alternate. I'm sad to say I've never actually met in person because Commissioner Ludwig is always there and he's a great advocate on the board. You have 2 advisory committee representatives, Barb Madison and Dennis Jewell, and they are relatively new to our advisory committee, but have been phenomenal advocates for all the services in Pine County. I'm hopeful that we'll get some funding from the omnibus bill. But knowing that we're going to get, even if we get that funding, I'm going to be in the same place in about another 3 years. The $100,000 additional that they're projected to give us won't make up for not getting an increase since 1989. And so we will be, even if it passes, I'll probably be back here letting you know what we do and looking for maybe alternate funding opportunities. Any questions about what we do as a region or what we do for Pine County?
Anybody?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'd imagine like you probably even beat the sheriff's department to some of these calls.
I
drug
do.
Calls and everything.
I do not.
I mean,
Your first responders are what? They are your first line of defense.
right.
Yep.
So I guess where I'm going with that is, funding. Have you been in contact with anybody about the opioid settlement money, or is anything coming your direction from that? Do you have any say in?
As my board would say, each county has the ability to decide where its opiate funding goes. To be transparent, there are several counties who are thinking about putting money towards the region if it aligns with their opiate settlement advisory decisions.
Okay, because you said you work to get AEDs out to the local volunteer fire departments. and
Yep,
stuff.
so we have done some AED grants in the past, but this big AED grant with the U of M, that was primarily law enforcement.
You were able to get money and then pass it on down to local, smaller government entities and volunteer fire departments and stuff.
Right, a lot of the AEDs that were currently in squad cars, because lots of counties have newish AEDs. Those got to go out to fire departments, some churches and schools and community activities. It was this wonderful, like kind of waterfall trickle down effect is
Sure.
They all got to go somewhere else.
Sure. Would you be, you could use some opioid settlement money, I would imagine, right?
I would certainly think that a majority of our activities are opiate or overdose related at this point.
All right. That's my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Marion. We do have a resolution. What number is that? .-29?
Yes.
23-29. In your packet there. To designate the week of May 21 through 27, 2023 as emergency medical services week in Pine County.
Resolution. Yeah, I'll move the resolution.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Motion by Ludwig, seconded by Lovegren. Any discussion on the resolution? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we'll move on to the solid waste certification of need. What this is every time the landfill, I sit on the landfill board. Called the East Central Solid Waste Commission. And every time we start running out of space, we have to get a permit to build new space. And we own the land, but we have to get a permit. And one of the things that kicks the ball off is the certificate of need. And all that basically is Caleb went through and projected what our trash might be collected from Pine County for the next 10 years. He based that off a formula that MPCA actually helps with on our population, and it's so many pounds per person based on our past history. This is how many tons of garbage we should produce. And then we have to build that next cell in the landfill in accordance with our CON, certificate of need. So this, every county has to do this.
Can you tell by those figures when you, if the recycling is going up and down?
Yeah, because our county is actually doing fairly well because we've done a lot of work with recycling. And we have a good measurement system because like where I live, I get my recycling picked up as part of my garbage service, and that's weighed every week. And then the transfer station here in Pine City and Willow River and in Hinckley, any recyclables that come off of there are weighed every week. They pick them up. So we know based on that, and then we know how much every ton of garbage that leaves Pine County and goes to the landfill is weighed. So we got a pretty good handle on what.
Sandstone, there's no way of knowing what's going there, but they're.
Yeah, because that's picked up.
Oh, that, it
It
gets,
gets picked up by our contractor and it's weighed.
it is weird.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot about sandstone.
So how much
That's
extra
it.
do you pay for your garbage to have recycling picked up?
Oh, don't ask me, Carrie.
Sorry.
23.95 a month. I don't, it's
Okay,
close to that.
for everything.
It's, I think they add $2 a month for recycling. They pick that up once a month. And the other is every week.
But it would be different throughout the county because the rest of the county is more rural and we're finding out that makes a big
It
difference.
makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Yep. So we do need a motion on this.
So there's not a resolution number or anything? Is it just to support the solid waste certificate?
Yeah, we gotta authorize the county board, myself to submit a letter to
Okay.
the East Central Solid Waste Commission.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Lovegren. Second by Moore. Any questions? Not all in favor, say aye.
Right.
Opposed? Was it jail
Yes.
program next? Okay, we've got the jail. Rod, you gonna do that?
You bet.
Got a bunch of great volunteers. that
Yes.
helped in the jail for a long time and.
Well, we're gonna do two things.
Yep.
Can I do them both
Yep,
So one after the other, let's say.
Yep.
So first I want to recognize the National Corrections Officer Week, which is next week. and our corrections officers. So I'm going to do that one first. So, and there's a resolution that goes along with that too. But first, before we get to that, Mr. Chair and members of the board, my name is Rod Williamson, the jail administrator for Pine County Sheriff's Office. And I present to you a request to recognize the corrections officers of Pine County during the National Corrections Officer Week by acknowledging Resolution 2023-28. Next week is the National Corrections Officer Week. On May 5th, 1984, President Ronald Reagan signed into order Corrections Officer Week Proclamation 5187, recognizing the hard work and the oftentimes unrecognized responsibilities of the corrections officer. Citizens generally understand the need for law enforcement in our communities. Deputies patrol our streets to protect and to serve. And when crimes are committed, they make arrests and criminals go to jail. The rest makes news headlines and deputies are recognized for their heroic actions, and our community feels safe with the criminals off the street. But law enforcement and protecting our community does not stop there. In fact, the arrest is only the tip of the iceberg and is a collective effort in protecting our community. Our Pine County corrections officers are a very large and a vital piece to protecting our community. Most people are unaware of what is involved in housing inmates in our county jail and the responsibilities of a corrections officer as they keep our community safe from the inside. Corrections officers have a dangerous but a rewarding job. Officers often oversee men and women who have been arrested and are awaiting arraignment or trial, or who have already been convicted of a crime and sentenced to serve a year or less in our county jail. Corrections officers are sometimes referred to as glorified babysitters by the community and oftentimes less respected as members of law enforcement. In fact, the corrections officer is a highly trained professional skilled in first aid, CPR, AED, use of force tactics, taser, chemical irritant, use of restraints, interpersonal communications, direct supervision, report writing, emergency policy and procedures, suicide prevention, and more importantly, crisis intervention. Crisis intervention skills that in today's world are exercised almost daily, considering the vast uptick in mentally ill individuals that are landing in our county jails. Corrections officer is a special person who must be able to respond to a medical situation at a moment's notice. They must be able to respond immediately to a fellow officer's call for aid in a unit of up to 60 inmates, armed with nothing more than their intellect and the behavior management skills learned and practiced every day. Corrections officers must be able to handle inmates twice their size, half their age. If inmate attacks an officer either verbally or physically and the officer does not react, the officer is viewed as a coward. If the officer protects themselves against great bodily harm and the officer then is viewed as a bully. At any time during the course of a shift, the corrections officer may be exposed to human feces, being spit on, bloodborne pathogens, and airborne diseases, and yet remain cool and calm. Corrections officers are unable to work from the safety of their home, manage inmates, and hold meetings via computer monitors. Instead, they put on their badge, their duty gear, including a mask, which we still do, during pandemic times, and report for duty within the confines of the facility, committed to providing for the safety and the security of everyone inside and the community they serve. The corrections officer must be the emergency medical caregiver, the tough guy, a counselor, good listener, social worker, educator, protector, and most of all, a diplomat. With all the obstacles, challenges, and hidden risks that the corrections officer must face, the men and the women of the Pine County Jail, they wear their uniform proudly, protecting and serving our community from the inside. I'd like to just end with some insightful words from President Ronald Reagan when he put into place the Proclamation 5187. And this was noted 39 years ago, he wrote this, and it still holds true today. President Ronald Reagan said, historically, corrections officers have been viewed as guards, occupying isolated and misunderstood positions in prisons and jails. In recent years, the duties of these officers have become increasingly complex and demanding. They are called upon to fill simultaneously custodial, supervisory, and counseling roles. Professionalism, dedication, and courage exhibited by these officers throughout the performance of these demanding and often conflicting roles deserve the utmost respect. The important work of corrections officers often does not receive the recognition from the public it deserves. It is appropriate that we honor the many contributions and accomplishments of these men and women who are a vital component of the field of corrections. Signed, President Ronald Reagan on May 5th, 1984. So I repeated some of the stuff I did last year you probably didn't recognize, but I thought it was very important. And so then we present to you the resolution, and I believe you have a copy of that.
Yeah.
We'd like to put in place.
I'll move the resolution, Mr. Chair. Second.
Got a motion by Ludwig, second by Moore. To approve the resolution for National Correction Officer Week. Any discussion?
Just a comment.
Yep.
I've been in that intake when it's a zoo. When you bring someone in that's already acting up in the public. And then they realize they're gonna be running for custody. Emotions run pretty high sometimes. So it can be a very dangerous place and it can be a really sad. place at the same time.
Yes. All right.
Any other questions? If not, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, Rod.
All right, thank you. So next, I want to recognize our program volunteers. We have a number of volunteers that provide services in the jail. And I missed the national recognition for Volunteers Week, but we thought it very appropriate to recognize, and we should do this more often. But Pine County Sheriff's Office wishes to formally recognize all jail program volunteers for their selfless giving of time, effort, and knowledge, generously serving our communities, providing jail programming events and educational courses for individuals incarcerated in our facility. We have more than 80 jail program volunteers giving of their time each week, making a positive difference in the life of incarcerated individuals in our care at the Pine County Jail. Volunteers help inmates in reconnecting with their families in the community they live in by facilitating an assortment of program events such as parenting classes, chemical freedom, Alcoholics Anonymous, pilot outreach, Talking Circle, His Way Ministry, Jehovah's Witness, and we had at one point quilting classes. And they do this all with a common goal as stated in our jail's mission statement to provide those incarcerated with education, behavior management, and various programming opportunities designed to improve their abilities to return as productive members of our society. Pine County Jail strives hard to maintain a professional level of program services and activities. Reaching this goal is not an easy task, and it requires the sacrifice of our volunteers who so willingly give of their time and talents. Without our jail program volunteers, we are unable to offer quality programming to our inmates. While all our volunteers are very important to us and they play a significant role in the success of jail programming, the Sheriff's Office would like to recognize 4 selfless volunteers that have generously given their time and talents, collectively giving over 83 years of volunteer service to our agency and our community. We have 4. I have one person that came here. Jim, do you want to come on up here for just a minute? But Jim Hansen, he's given over 10 years in religion programming, currently in His Way Ministry. We had Jack Sowers, over 15 years in a religion programming, currently in pilot outreach. David Larson, over 20 years in self-help programming with currently with Chemical Freedom, and Jim Copen of over 38 years in religion in His Way Ministry. So he's done a lot for us. So I want to just recognize Jim, seeing as he's the one here. One of them is in Florida, and the others are doing, I believe they've got programs going tonight and tomorrow. So Pine County, I'd like to give you this. There's a certificate, Jim. And we also want to recognize, and I'll go through this here, Pine County Sheriff's Office sincerely appreciates all you do for our agency and the community we live in. We wish to commemorate your years of dedicated volunteer services to our agency by presenting you with our Sheriff's Office Years of Service Challenge coin. On this coin are embedded the core values of our agency: honesty, integrity, respect, and loyalty. These attributes also embody the true meaning of what it takes to be a positive influence on others as a program volunteer with the Pine County Sheriff's Office. So Jim, I'd like to leave this here. Thank you so much.
you very much.
And yes, I get that picture thing. Here we go. There we go. And then here's our. I think Jim has a couple things he'd like to say.
Yeah, Rod, you said one, one, 1 minute. Commissioner Helen knows me quite well. Yes, first of all, it's a privilege to be here and before this powerful group. I was wondering if you could turn down the wind a little bit here in Plain County the last couple of days. So, well, it is a privilege to be here and I'm just a small piece of the puzzle. I taught 36 years teenagers and I've enjoyed my time here at the jail. I spend a lot of time in jail and the deal is I think about the inmates throughout the week, pray for them, think about them. All of a sudden I'll get an impression, you should send that to so-and-so. And so I want you to know the other volunteers feel like that too. Last night, Steve Smith was there. He's a great guy out of Pine Tech. He's retired now. Lisa Stevens usually comes. She had hurt her back. And then Chris Johns was there. And let's see, who else? Sue Klein. And so anyway, we have wonderful people like this and then so many others on different nights. Sometimes I feel very inadequate. I know I tell my wife sometimes, Jackie, I got nothing tonight for jail. Here's her response. Well, maybe you should get out of the way and let the Holy Spirit take over. and that is certainly true. And there are times when I've gone up there, especially in the wintertime, you know, it's dark, you know, it's 7 o'clock and don't really feel like going out there, but every time I've come home floating on air, you know, it's just been wonderful. So I consider it a calling. We had a lady, I overheard her tell some of our ladies, and I guess I was there too, but last night she said, I've never felt love like this before. And that just deeply moved me. We have people there that really their circumstances and so on. I'm not excusing crimes or bad behavior or anything, but so many of them have had miserable situations. Again, we demand personal accountability so we don't make excuses. In fact, I tell people to do this kind of work, you need a gold heart and a steel spine. That's what you need. So we don't excuse anything. Nevertheless, Steve and I have talked about this, Commissioner Howland, before. I would guess that a great majority of these people have either mental or chemical problems, and you hardly know which came first. Sometimes the chemical, the mental health, the chemical. I should also say about our staff, and I appreciate so much Brent John and Jim Reiser too. Talking to inmates, sometimes I don't pry, but they'll mention that our jail feels like it's really treats them as humans in concerning food and programs and so many things. They feel that our jail tries to make them better, that they don't come out just the same. And that's the deal. No matter how bad a crime is, you know, most of these people are going to be out on the street again someday. And we really need to do something in their lives to help them in some way. And so that's where we're coming from. I hope I didn't leave out anybody, but I'm so thankful to Jim and to Brent, who have been so faithful about creating a climate where some good things can happen in our jail. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
I will add that Jim takes a lot of personal time and follows up with some of these people and goes and visits some where they reside, whether it's in Lake Lena or downtown Pine City. So thanks, Jim. We'll move on to the National Center for Public Lands. This is I know about this much before you, more than you people do probably. Because I learned it at a AMC board meeting and then we got another filler in on it, a couple Fridays ago at another AMC board meeting. But, we heard from a couple of county commissioners from Montana who live in counties of vast acreages. You know, way bigger than St. Louis County, who have probably 85% of their county is public lands. And so they have gotten together in called the Western Institute of Public Lands or whatever, anyway. And our AMC has sent a representative to that group, and it is Rick Sway, who is the past president of our AMC in a cohort of ours that from up on the North Shore. And I trust Rick, and I guess more than anything, I'm not trying to sell this program, but from what I understand, what they want to do is get enough money so they can do some good, honest research of the cost benefits, for one thing, of what does public land do for the public, and for the county that the public land is in. How can that county survive? We have many counties in our AMC District 1 that are, you know, more than 50% public land counties. We're a long ways from that, but, and this is based off a formula that comes with, you know, some federal funding. It's called the LATCF funding, which was the $100,000 that many counties in Minnesota got, based on your, is it Indian tribal?
It's based on the amount of federal built eligible land in the county with a floor of $100,000.
Yeah.
So if you had any federal eligible PILT land, you got $100,000. And then if you had more than that, there was a formula for some of the larger counties.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
is this a one-time fee or is this going to be?
it is. They're looking at building a fund of, I believe, $15 million, and think that fund would carry them through years and years of research and not so much lobbying, educational efforts, I guess is what they're calling it. They came up with this $1,000 based on a 1% of that fee that of the 100,000 that most counties got, and you know, some counties got 2.8 million. So whether or not they're gonna pay 1% of 2.8 million is yet to be determined. I think it's, you know, it's something that's supported by AMC, it's something that's supported by NACO. It's not a Pine County program. It's a national, it's a national issue. I think to be involved with it would be not the worst thing. We're not a huge amount of money. We might see some bang for our buck.
Well, I got a few things if I can, Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
Well, to me, I read it. I mean, I just see another duplication of services here. There already are these agencies. It says there they want to hire 1 to 2 people. Of investment of 15 million. I guess I can't figure out why don't they get it from the state, because they're sitting on 17 billion in St. Paul. And where I say it's a duplication of services, I mean, they wanna, in the bullet points on page 2. It says they want county partnerships with federal agencies. For reduce wildfire risk, protect watersheds, conserve species and their habitat. I think we already have DNR, Bowser, MPCA and Soil and Waters to help with that. And then another one is they wanna, I think we already are doing this with our economic development. It says meeting the unique challenges of facing public lands and counties such as housing affordability. I hear a lot of that lately. And it says not only it's affordability for our residents, but for federal employees. So I just Googled it the other day. The average, it says, the average federal employee in Pine County is $96,910 for their wage. And then our, just for like a, I guess just a regular, when I Googled it, citizen, what was it? 50,000, but I think that encompassed the whole family. And we're at a 6.1% poverty rate. I know it's $1,000, but that's $1,000 that's comes out of, you know, our county money. I know we gave $1,000 to the Highway 23 Coalition to promote their 4 lanes down in another part of Minnesota, but really, when you look at our part of Highway 23, there's parts of our highway, we don't even have shoulders. They're going from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. So myself personally, it just looks like another government entity that if anyone goes to it, there's per diems, there's mileage, there's more expenses. And it's just to do what other government people are doing or should be doing. We have a lot of land. I understand that. We have General Andrews, we have Nemadji, Banning, St. Croix Forest, St. Croix Park, Pine County Game Refuge, Sandstone National Refuge, Chengmatana.
This is a federal land program.
Yeah, then of our federal, what do we got? Just a piece full of sandstone prison. And that's it, right?
We've got some along the Wild and Scenic Riverways.
Yeah. So they give us some money and then they want 1,000 back.
No, it's not a government agency. It's
Well,
I think you're
the whole group of,
using,
Committee.
yeah,
but I'm not promoting it. I'm saying it's a process that if I would recommend that at District 1 meeting on June 1st, everybody go to that and we ask Rick, who's been involved with it a lot longer than anybody else in Minnesota, to give us an update.
where's the District 1 meeting at? Aiken. It's in Aiken. That's close.
This committee has been, I think, do they call them the WIR? WIR?
Yeah, WIR.
So it was it last year or the year before? I think it was last year that AMC joined with WIR and they went out and they went to Alaska actually and were part of their meetings. And that's where they started joining forces to see how we can work together, which is really good. And then they came to the AMC convention for NACO.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it's nice seeing those come together because it's just the Western states, so bringing it all together so that we
The
can.
Western states are the ones that have been driving the train in the beginning, and then they started looking around and saying, hey, California and Virginia, Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, we're all in this thing together. And let's try to figure out this whole public land thing at the federal level.
So can we ask Julie to have this part of the, or Matt, would it be Matt that we would ask, or Ryan?
Right.
To see if this could be part of the agenda.
I've asked him already.
Perfect.
So I'm here and maybe we'll just leave this on the table. We'll talk about it after District 1. Then we'll move on to schedule a special meeting of the Committee of the Whole. Strategic Planning meeting. So we're looking at some dates here, June 13th, June 27th.
They're both open for me.
The 13th is gonna be good for me. I'm not sure if we'll be back on the 27th.
When is Grandma's Marathon?
17.
17th.
So you came up with that pretty fast.
Not that I'm running Grandma's Marathon, but I gotta be there to watch.
So if it's the 17th, would the 13th work for you then, Steve?
Yeah,
that'll
13th
work
is
for Matt.
Tuesday. We're going up on Wednesday, so. 13th work for everybody?
Yeah, it looks like it over here.
Which date?
13th? That work, Matt?
Yeah.
All right,
We'll do
June
13th.
13th.
Yep.
9 a.m.
9 AM here.
here. Thank
Sounds
you.
Good. Thanks. Okay, we'll move on to some reports. Arrowhead,
Didn't make it, Mr. Chair.
all right. Pine County Educational Leadership Network. I apologize, I went to the wrong building.
You want to go on that, Josh?
I didn't read the whole memo.
Sandstone.
Yeah, it was pretty well attended. I think we had from every school district there. Learned a lot. They did talk a lot about the blue zones. I thought that was very interesting, talking about looking at maybe trying to do something with school lunches collaboratively through the whole county. I know all the school boards and school districts are so crimped on money, but maybe there's some options there that we could try to promote locally grown food and actually have a little better lunches for the kids. The other thing was that state survey they talked about. The thing that, and I don't have my notes, but what was it, 30% of teenage girls, 9th grade girls feel like nobody cares about them out in the public. So, and this was just a survey, it was a voluntary survey they gave out to every, what was it, 9th?
Yeah, it's a Minnesota student survey, so it's administered in 9th and 11th and maybe 6th grade.
Yeah.
And I think Becky did the presentation. I think she pulled the data for the 11th graders in Pine County.
Okay.
I thought she did the 9th grade.
Maybe it was one or the other.
There's Becky.
She'll tell us.
Oh,
Good morning. My name is Becky Foss, the Director of Pine County Health and Human Services. And the data I pulled was for 9th grade students. The survey is given to 5th, 8th, 9th, and 11th grade students and was given in the first half of 2022. And 9th grade students' responses in Pine County were compared to 9th grade student responses across the state, just for some comparison purposes.
And one of the things that I just find interesting is like with that, a lot of us and don't give a lot of credit for kids these days, and kids are different than they were. And that was part of the things we were talking about. You know, like we said, in Walmart, a kid might say, hey, B word to some other kid, and they're just, that's how they talk. Yes, do you maybe agree with it? If your kid said it, would you maybe say, hey, you probably shouldn't use that in public? But that doesn't mean they're bad kids. It doesn't mean they're hollering at somebody. It's just that's the way it is. And I'm guessing our parents and your parents and everybody's parents probably thought the same about everybody, every generation as they were coming up. But that is, you know, you think about it, I think of people that come into my store and they're like, then kids over there, they don't trust them or anything like that. And yes, there's a lot of kids you don't trust, and or even my own, but to that point, you know, sometimes you maybe got to give them benefit of the doubt sometimes. I don't know. It just is, I've been thinking a lot about it, and I have a lot of young kids that work for me, and I do give them a lot of credit and try. And yes, they make me mad sometimes, along with my own kids, but
But it's part of the learning process and how are they gonna get better as they grow too, so if that. So.
Can I, so Becky, I'm glad you're on. After that meeting, one of the things that they talked about is the kids nowadays don't feel like anybody pays attention. And so I catch myself when I'm at the grocery store and, you know, if they check you out at the grocery store, we find ourselves, we're whipping out our cards, we're whipping out cash, we're putting things back in our pockets or a person, we say thanks and we walk out the door, but do we ever do eye contact? You know, and so I caught myself at Quick Trip the other day and it wasn't a kid, it was an adult, but I caught myself walking out and I had to stop and look him in the eyes and say thank you because we don't do that anymore. We're so preoccupied with everything that's going on. So that's a big thing that they were talking about is if we would just take the time to acknowledge them.
I visit with all of them.
Yeah, yeah, which is good, you know, and one of the things that was said was if they carry out your groceries, and I thought of Chris's or Daggett's, when they carry out your groceries, do you say thank you? You know, I know my sister always says tip them, you know, you tip waitresses, tip them, you know, how much do we actually think about these? I think we're just so preoccupied in our own little world. So I think quite a bit more about what I do now after that meeting. And so thank you for bringing that stuff up. Jeff also did a very good presentation on Narcan and the importance that the schools may have it at the schools in case they have a crisis so that they can.
So I have a question. So the survey they take, do they repeat it? So they try to grab those kids every so many years so they get that base? That's what I thought, yeah.
Is it every year, Becky?
It's every 3 years.
Yep, yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And that was a good point about the Narcan. In the survey, they talked about use of drugs. And it is very low, like on the opioids, it is very low in school, in high school. But like Jeff was talking about, what if, you know, you're the kid, they're coming in on the bus and I'm very naive when it comes to the opioids, but you know, I see all these gummy things now around and you know, my kids love gummy bears and gummy whatever. So what if one of them, you know, someone, they do cruel stuff and gave some kid one and or a kid's like, hey, try this pill and went in and overdose. I just, the ill effects of it are none from what we're seeing, just to have it there. If it was our kid, your kid or any kid, it doesn't matter. It's ridiculous, really, honestly, not to have it.
I think, Josh, I got my eyes open the other night at that opiate forum. And you know what, JJ asked, why should we have Narcan at a library? And the guy that gave this presentation's question would be, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't we have it here? Because the chances of us in the rest of our lifetime running across somebody in an overdose situation are very, very high, probably 100%. And they're not all bad druggies that do it. They're like accidental or somebody gave them something on purpose. And
Well, and kids,
if we can, they can't help themselves if they don't survive that time.
I think the best comment that I heard, and it was at the opioid thing, and it was a friend of ours who lost her son last year to an opioid overdose. And she had stated, you know, people say that Narcan is a crutch. It's like, oh, I can get wasted and I can almost die and they'll give me Narcan and I'll be fine. And then I can do it again. She said, but really what it is a second chance to live. And she said, you know, for some people it might be a crutch, but for the majority, it's a second chance. Which, you know, you think of they talked, was it 6,000 pills that were intercepted that were on their way to Cambridge of fentanyl? That's 6,000 overdoses that just got caught, you know, that could have ended up in our kids' hands. That's not, we need to do what we can to protect them too and give them that second chance. So, it was a good meeting. It was, we have some amazing department heads. Thank you, Jeff and Becky, who can bring these up. Sam did an amazing job talking about the blue zone. It was fun because the next night we had the meeting with the zoning and environmental or economic development, and John Doro was there. And I talked to him about how we were talking at the blue zone meeting, how we can bring the farms and take that produce. They always say that if you can eat locally, you're doing better because you're eating the things from your area and it's easier on your system. So I said, we were just talking about you last night and how we can bring your farm products into our schools and make it a healthier place for our kids to be too. So there's a lot of options coming from that meeting that came from the school. Back to the
Good.
school. Yeah,
Did you get the Narcan in the library yet? Does anybody know?
no, we're going to be having the Narcan presentation and I don't think it's going to be this month. It'll probably be next month to decide if that's something where they want to go or not. But they'll do the full, it was decided last month that we're going to have the full presentation and then everybody will be able to take some Narcan home with them and see what it is and hear the presentation and the facts, and then we'll make the decision.
Yeah, my comment was what type of people go to the library.
They're already there.
Yeah.
We've already
Well, they're
had
already there.
places in
That's
the
why
library.
I never allowed my children to go to the public library.
Well, and my mother-in-law was a
They're
librarian.
regular-
my
I think they're
grandkids live
regular
there.
people. I go to the library.
Yeah.
It's the only way I can read now, JJ, is I can't read because of my eyes. So I check out audiobooks.
Mhm.
We got the
So-
Kindle. They're pretty nice.
It's used by a lot of,
The options are.
they're
great.
not all drug heads that go to the library.
You know,
So I was just there on Saturday and it was fun. I went in and did a May baskets. We made May baskets with the grandkids and watching the families come into the libraries, watching the little kids. I mean, little kids. I need my library card. I found a book to check out, it's just watching that excitement and seeing their eyes open. And books are the best thing that we can do for our kids. It takes you to so many different places. I love books. So if we can have what we need to support the staff at the libraries so that if somebody is crashing, we do have things are changing. We've got more homeless people going into the libraries. We've had drug overdoses in our libraries. If we can do what we can to support our staff so that they can help protect the people that are there by taking care of the people that are in need at that point in time, I think it's something to look at more closely.
watch the doors.
And they do have people that they don't let into the library because they've abused certain things or they've done things that were inappropriate. And so they're banned from the libraries and they do watch those doors and they do watch those people.
We'll move on to the lining zoning workshop. Few of us were there.
That was good too. It was interesting seeing what the zoning is. And, I think, I was sitting in that meeting thinking I was on the Hinckley Township Board and I was the chair of the zoning committee when we did it and how we could change Hinckley Township because we do need to have more housing and they don't want to be out in the middle of the boonies. A lot of people can't handle being out in the boonies. I like living in the boonies, but they want to be closer to town where they have water and sewer. And there's no way that they're going to run. I live 1.5 miles out of town. They're not going to run water and sewer to my house. But if we could fix it so in the areas that are more surrounding the cities, if we could open more housing, we have 10-acre limits or minimums that you can buy. If we could change something like that and maybe make it so that we could spread out a little bit further. Those were some of my thoughts as we went through that meeting.
My thoughts I always think of stuff afterwards.
Yeah.
Maybe we missed the point. We were talking about economic development and zoning and somebody brought up the point, we should have more slaughter facilities. So people could you gotta make an appointment a year ahead of time to have a cow or a pig butchered and
We don't have any big enough to do a lot of the farms that we have here because they have too many animals.
one of the immediate problems that I found out is there have been 3 applications for slaughter facilities that have been turned down at the township level
Mhm.
because nobody wants something built next to them. So how do we get over that hurdle?
Kind of like the construction landfill sites too.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's
Nobody wants it next door.
tough, not my neighborhood. Type of deal.
It's good to know that they're thinking about it though and trying to figure out different ways to move.
Yeah. Watershed, Snake River, they were canceled.
They were, but they had a, Kanabec County called a special meeting the Friday before that Monday to talk about Snake River watershed with the whole board. So it was a whole Kanabec County board, and then they invited the other counties to join. And David and I went from Pine County. The thing that I found interesting was it was like they were starting from the beginning. And I talked to some of them afterwards or during the break and said, but we've already had our votes. You know, we've already said that. In fact, I talked to Dave from Mille Lacs County afterwards and I said, but Dave, we already voted. It is going to be an 8-member board. It's the soil and water and it is the county commissioners. And he said, well, when did you do that? And I said, I think it was February, but there was nobody from Mille Lacs here. And so the fact that they're going back to the very beginning and trying to, I can understand, I mean, they've got a whole new board getting them totally into the picture as to what's going on with the Snake River watershed. But I don't think that they had an idea as to what's already processed. So it'll be interesting this month to find out where things went because we're still waiting for the counties to come back with where they're at with what they want to do with the membership board and with the money and that type of stuff.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
If I could just add, so they did have John Kolb, who's an attorney, do a presentation, and he kind of was the main event of the day. And he has worked with Mille Lacs and I think Kanabec County as a water ditch attorney, so he's well known on that side. But anyways, his conclusion that he shared is if you have the one watershed, one policy board, and you have the Snake River Watershed Management Board, you're redundant.
Yeah.
That those two things are just being redundant. And so I think that was a good message for the attendees to hear.
Yeah.
From someone other than us.
Do you think they listened?
I do, you know, the other thing was that they were saying, it was interesting because they were saying, well, we don't want to tax them. You know, we don't want to tax the public, you know, that's not something we want to do, or we don't want to take their land unless we, you know, that's not what we want to do. Which the way that we move this, we can't tax their land and we can't take it, we can't confiscate
But-
things, so,
But we are taxing now.
right,
Because we pay a membership fee.
right.
That's what we want to get rid of.
Right, yeah. So I mean, it was a good meeting. It was interesting because it wasn't where we are today. It was, but you know, bringing everybody on page as to what it actually is to have a watershed was a good thing.
Thinking back, when did they start One Watershed, One Plan?
Let's see,
It's been like 4 years, hasn't it?
I don't know.
5, 6 years.
Because how long has St. Croix was the
Lower
first?
St. Croix, we must have been going 5 years by now.
Yeah, I remember
6
the
years.
initial talks and
Yeah,
because the law was like 2016 or something like that.
yeah.
And it just seemed completely no brainer for Snake River. And now
Yeah.
it's like, yeah. Okay.
So we had our Lower St. Croix Watershed Partnership
Another good one.
Yeah.
program last Monday. And there's some great projects going on in that whole watershed in every county, including Pine. Interestingly enough, we're gonna revisit the entity versus the collaborative again this fall. We've said, start thinking about that, because there are many of us that say we should have just been an entity right off the bat. But we weren't gonna fight about that for the duration, but you know, it'll come when people are ready. And I think the thing that we have agreed on is the most important thing. We'll figure out how to govern it. But we've got a lot of projects that we could be working on, and let's get working on those projects.
Yeah.
And that's been a good thing. East Central Regional Development Commission.
Yeah, that was down in Mora, the 24th. The gal spoke from the state DOT about electric vehicles. I don't know if anybody could guess, but there's 35,000 light duty vehicles that the state of Minnesota manages or runs or drives.
Mm.
That will all be electric, I would imagine. she talked about the charging stations that they want to start putting up. 900,000 per site. And there's 4 chargers per site, is what she said. I guess I couldn't imagine a gas station with 4 pumps. I get frustrated when I think somebody's buying a snack or something, I'm waiting, but
How long does it take?
40 minutes on a fast charge?
Takes a
How far is that, a full charge?
That's a fast charge. That's not,
Oh, it's a fast charge, 40 minutes.
yeah, so I don't know.
How long did it take to charge ours that we had, do you know?
Well, we didn't have a fast charger, so it was like 8 hours. Right, Debbie?
I guess I,
Friends of
Sad
mine that
story,
have
sorry.
them have found out that, and you know, if they take them to 85% charge, they're more efficient.
Looks like your phone.
And they, about 20 minutes, if they get in there when they're still about 30%. You know, don't let it, they've just figured that out. They don't let them run down to 0.
so she had mentioned 900,000 per site or 4 chargers per site. So that's what they're looking at there. We talked about the audits that happen at the ECRDC. I don't know if anyone knew this, but you have to be audited every year.
Yep.
Okay, the amount of money they're talking about that goes through there, just my opinion, it's pass-through money. They apply for a grant, they get money, they have a checking balance, of course, and for their own office costs, but there's businesses that take in and handle way more money than that, and they don't audit every year. Every year you do your taxes is basically an audit, I think. You look at all your expenses, you look at every check, you can sense and see if there's something missing or gone.
But this is taxpayer money.
This is taxpayer. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
this,
And
you
considering
can't
that
do, you
we
can't
have-
do it anything business like. Yeah, I agree with you.
We have
Yeah.
had past embezzlers here in Pine County and so just knowing that it's, you know, it is a sickness. It's something that, you know, but they gotta get caught.
This is a cost that's 17,000 this
Yeah.
year, 18,000 next year, and 20,000 the year after.
How do you pay? Credit card?
Okay, what?
Well, no, that's just what it's
Electric charge.
costing the taxpayer to have it audited, so employees, I guess.
Are you talking car charging?
Yeah.
Yeah, that I think is credit card.
But the audit,
I was just going through my report here.
yeah. Yep, the audit, I think is I mean, it's no different than we have to have every program audited here at the county.
Mhm.
The library does, the,
Library board does.
I was just making a comparison
Yeah.
of what happens outside of the government realm. So anyway, they'll be paying 17,000 for this year, 18,000 the next year, and 20,000 for 3 years. So what, almost $60,000 for audits. Give away tax dollars. Talked a little bit about the volunteer driver mileage only being 14 cents a mile versus business being 65.5. And that was about it at the ECRDC.
All right. No NLX.
no, but,
Yeah,
sorry.
all right.
I got a letter from them and the House and the Senate have passed the House passed that they would fully support financially the NLX and the House dropped it by quite a bit and they want us,
They're at 50, I think.
yeah, they want us to do support letters. Asking, is it appropriate to do a non-support letter? You know, I mean, I kind of didn't know where to go with this one.
And it requires a state match.
Does it require a federal match?
No, well, see, oh yeah,
Coming.
well, it's federal dollars they're
States.
using, isn't it?
Yeah,
Well, I don't think the federal supports this. When I talked to Pete Stauber, I don't think that the
I
Fed,
thought the federal dollars, maybe I mixed up on that. I thought it had to have a state match and that's what they were trying to sort out here.
that's what I thought too.
Hmm. So I wonder, I don't know. Anyways, that's where we just got a pleading letter the other day to ask us to send a support letter to the commissioners
I don't
on
know where they're
this
getting it.
committee. Yeah. So that's for NLXs.
HRA Economic Development.
Let me start that. Sure. Yeah, we had our meeting April 26th. Operational reports were pretty standard. Kelly, they're addressing some investing issues and moving money around to gain the best advantage, and Kelly is helping that with that real good. There was Megan Elliott, who has the old Rock High School in Sandstone as a project. She presented a thing, and she remodeled a jail up in Duluth and made it apartments and had it done. That was pretty impressive. And it sounds like she knows where to get the money to make this work, but we'll see. But it was an interesting presentation. If she pulls it off, at some point, I think, I don't know if the city and the county they'll be looking for like tax abatement or something like that downstream, kind of like what we did with the hospital for a number of years. So that might be coming at us. It'll all depend on how funding works and stuff. So something to keep in mind.
Did they talk about the condition of the school?
The what?
The condition of the school? Because Harvest Christian School had it for a while, or not Harvest Christian School, but Jack Allen, he was the superintendent of the Harvest Christian School, and he had bought it to have it as a kid's, he was gonna do some stuff with it, and they decided that it was just in such bad shape, there was nothing that they could do.
So the structure is fine. What happened was it was hit by lightning and a bunch of stuff burned, so they're just gonna, the outside shell is they're gonna just knock down the additions,
Okay,
the big elementary, and then just work with the stone facade, and they're gonna leave the kindergarten addition on the north end, where the stairway in there. I don't know if there's an elevator in there or not, but
it'd be nice to see that building get used again.
it's gonna take a lot of money.
A lot of money, yes.
Yeah, they have asbestos, lead paint and mold issues are just
Mhm.
definitely a fixer upper.
A lot of asbestos too. Then, Dave, brought
what?
up the
Oh. Yes.
Hole in the roof, been a hole in the roof, water's been running through it.
pigeons. Lots of pigeons. Then Dave discussed the North Court Apartment project, if they want to take that on, that's coming due in 1/24, which we talked about that before. That has 8 site-based vouchers that are attached to it. And I think that they assign to the facilities committee to do the research. And the internal committees. What else? That's all I got on top of my head. Otherwise, they're pretty much original. I didn't miss any major, did I?
No.
That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mille Lacs band meeting. It was hard to have a meeting because we were having a meeting before the meeting. And everybody kept stopping by and talking to somebody, so it was,
It was,
I don't know if we accomplished a lot, except, we were there for the opioid forum. So we were there anyway, and we did establish a meeting schedule. I think that was probably the biggest thing we accomplished.
we met Sam Moose, who
Yeah.
is the human or the health.
Commissioner of Administration,
Thank you. And he,
formerly the Commissioner of Health,
yes.
Human Services.
Yes, thank you. And I think he's gonna maybe be more apart, and we talked about the opioid settlement, and he is very disappointed that they didn't get anything yet for the opioid because they have such a issue. And so we had talked about if they could be a part of our opioid settlement and to figure out how we can work together with that. And I said, well, what kind of things are you looking for? And he said, well, we need housing for rehab. And I said, we all need that. We can't get that for anything anymore. There aren't any facilities. So it was interesting talking to him and seeing the issues that they have, but that might be something that we'll want to talk about down the road.
Oh.
So,
That brings us to the opioid forum, and we've talked about it. It was very informative for a guy who's completely naive. It was a good evening, so thanks everybody who put that on. Our public health department did an awesome job of getting a tremendous amount of vendors there, and 200 and I don't know, 35 people or something were there.
And the speakers were amazing.
Yeah.
They had great speakers.
I think the biggest thing I had no idea. I thought honestly, I thought Narcan was something like we used to have in the army when somebody got gassed with nerve gas and you put that pen in in their thigh and gave them an injection. I honestly thought that's what it was. Now I find out it's a inhaler type thing that and you gotta keep people breathing because that's the biggest thing. They suffocate and they gotta get their lungs going. So,
I think the majority of it out there though are the shots, because the
Yeah.
shots are so much cheaper. The nasal, I think, is $40 and the shots are like 15 or something like that a piece. So the difference in that, but I think our officers all have the nasal, correct? And that's what this company that presented, that's what they give because they said it's easier, but I think the majority of them are giving the shots. What I got at home is the shots.
I don't have anything. Zoning board,
Yep, I know I've said this before, but we have a great zoning board and planning commission. They work really hard to get it right. But anyway, they passed a VRBO type thing with the conditions, but they passed it. And then they passed a subdivision plat but then the lot had to stay unbuildable. It's just gonna be for storage and stuff like that. Because of flood. Then there was discussion on the shoreland ordinance review and discussion on potential performance standards for commercial properties that end up in the shoreland. It was all in the shoreline. But I wanted to bounce something up. Where did we land ever in our discussion with VRBOs? And I know some counties have put MIT on them. And I don't know if we've ever thought about that or how many we have even something and I know I understand the benefit of them. And I also understand where the cops might have a hassle if there's too big of a party on a lake somewhere, and it's disturbing everybody else, but
I think it was Cook County that passed a moratorium where they kind of stalled them and said, we need to rethink this because they'd hire teachers or they'd hire staff and there was no housing because up there it's so recreational.
Yeah.
Everything was getting purchased for VRBOs. And
I think
so
Aiken was doing something too, but I can't remember where they landed up.
yeah, it's a good thing during our topics to talk about at our District 1 conference, but we did, remember not less than a year ago, I think Leslie gave a little presentation on VRBOs
Yep.
that
Yep.
they're not the scourge of society,
No,
and they're
And I think one of the interesting pieces that Leslie presented was the VRBOs that are within the zoning regulatory authority of Pine County are Lakeshore, and those are not displacing entry level or workforce housing. And so some of those, like Cook County is the example where those are displacing workforce housing. That wasn't what we found here last time we looked. And absent zoning, it would require a countywide licensing requirement, which we don't have and would be brand new. And so that would be, the methodology that the board would have to consider if it wanted to do countywide regulation.
yeah, I just think it's a point where I could see someone buying a house and then turning it into a VRBO somewhere and we would never know. Or how would the odds?
I do get complaints from people who end up, they own a house next to somebody that rents it out. And so every weekend, there's a bachelorette party or a bachelor party going on at that house next door. And they don't necessarily mind so much, except people don't know when to go to bed,
I certainly don't want to interfere with someone
Yeah,
that goes to Texas for a month and says, rents their place out to help offset their taxes or whatever while they're gone, or, you know, for split, somebody use their house in and out, or maybe nobody takes it or not, but I don't think that's a big deal. You know, why would we even worry about that?
We can certainly put it on a cow meeting sometime and visit it again if we want to.
And then I just want to touch, I know we talked about the EMS because of that, but if the funding doesn't come through from the state, there's gonna be a push probably before June. That each county that belongs is gonna have to start contributing dollars. So just so you have that in your head, and they were throwing numbers around like somewhere between $8,000 and $11,000 or something, and I don't know. We'll have to have some serious thought, and I don't know how does it work with our fire departments? Where are they training? And, you know, do we still meet with them? Because we don't have any county ambulances anymore. And I know you guys train through the college, which you get all your EMT stuff paid by the state through the college. I figured that out. They don't reimburse through this EMS. So we need, and I know they service that list she gave us, they still service, but they run out of funding so fast that there is no service. So I don't have those numbers in my head, and it seems to me that it's gonna be a lot of numbers for each one of those departments.
Yeah, and I know they're getting training now, and I don't know where the money comes from.
Yeah, I know, they jump, like, I know Carrick was jumping in with
Yeah.
Moose Lake and stuff like that, and I know. And there is no training dollars left right now. I think we're down to $6,000 or something. That's the grant. So there's just so we know something's coming in. I don't know what it's gonna be.
So just trying to like timeline that out. That gives our board one more meeting in May and 2 meetings in June before the EMS board runs out of money.
Well, yeah, well, they'll be all right. She said she'd be coming back in the future, right? Well, I think that's really gonna be my job or Jay, you know, we're on that committee, but it's like, we have to figure out. We want to do it ourselves within the county, or do we want to be a member and let them? The coordinator coordinate with all.
Yeah, I think my big question would be, how much training do we get from Central
That's why I just,
EMS?
that's what I don't know with all the fire departments.
You know, that'd be
First responder.
pretty quick to find out.
Yeah.
But we can do that before our strategic plan meeting, maybe. I've got a couple others. One is a AMC meeting, and I know you guys get all the AMC legislative updates, but they had a long laundry list of updates on legislative issues, including armor radio funding, community service formula. That's our probation, transportation funding, the tax bill, housing affordability, homelessness, duty disability, score funding, cannabis, mental health, elections, election funding, human services, modernization, and mental health. Those are all huge items, dollar-wise, that will impact Pine County. Whether or not they fund them at any level, some level, they're all things. And I went to the Emergency Communication Board last Friday with Scott Grice. And I've been on that board since it started. And if you remember back a dozen years ago when Armor started, there was an extra tax, a 911 tax put on your phone bill to buy all the towers. And then we spent about $1 million of Pine County funds. We actually stole it from Highway and never paid them back, if I remember right, in order to pay off our.
We did.
Did we pay them back? Okay. Okay, but anyway, we we've had to buy all the radios and equip all the cars. Radios have about tripled since when we originally bought them. The ones we have now are not capable of working with the 911 enhanced version. The guy that he's gonna hopefully present at our district meeting. But he held up his cell phone and he says, here's what's happened when that 911 system was built. Back in the 80s and the early 90s, it was built when everybody had a copper line going to their house. And now over 90% of all calls going to 911 come on a cell phone. It can't handle it. It can't address it. It can't text to talk or text to 911 is actually a program that somebody wrote that emulates texting, but it's not true texting. And so there's huge dollars like starting over, except the towers are there, but our consoles and our dispatch rooms need to be updated. All of our car radios and our handheld radios need to be updated. And that's just not for 30 some sheriff deputies. It's when you think of how deep that goes in the county, fire departments, ambulances, all those people. You know, they're talking in Northeast Minnesota, I believe he said 60,000 radios. And what do they cost now, Jeff? 6,000 a piece for a car radio, you know, instead of 2,500. So anyway, he also put a passionate plea, and I also warned Ryan that he's going to be asked to go to another meeting, because the one thing we haven't done a good job is including our tech folks in these talks, and it's all technology. And we're past the policy issue of do we want to do it or don't we want to do it? We need technical help. And so Ryan in the room at these meetings. So
Is anybody planning on going to District 1 on June?
I am.
I'm gonna try to go too, yeah.
That's kind of what I got.
I have a couple others. So it's been through the TNT committee with NACO, one of the things that they're working on is digital equity. And so they've been doing these listening sessions, and they would ask, they've got a list of questions, and if anybody's interested, I can get the link and send it to you so that you can do the questions. And it's a full series, but they would go through the questions, and then you'd listen to people throughout the country that would give their answers to how they can do digital equity. And I sat in on one with TNT, and then I sat in on two other ones just to discuss what our issues are here in Pine County. So they would talk about how can we make sure that people get cheap internet. And I just kept saying, we need internet, period. You know, we need to go back to the basics and get internet for everybody. And then we can talk about the equity, you know, how we can keep it down and in place. I mean, I understand that that's important too. But it was really interesting, you know, how can we make sure that it's equitable? And it's like, you know, do it by census block. You know, if you do it by census block, especially in our rural areas, it's not going to go to the congested areas. It will hit everybody. And so just being able to voice how we can help our constituents with that, it was good. And then also, when you guys, I sounds like you had a really good road review, which was good, but I sat in through the ICWA policy committee. And I signed up for 3 different committees on that, and they'll be meeting on the 3rd Tuesdays of every month. So I'll have to run out of our meetings and go home and do those meetings, but it's going to be interesting to see how they work that together to make it so that the wording will work for our employees and for the families that are dealing with ICWA at this point. So it's an honor to be on that committee. It's going to be good. And then I had SHAC, a couple SHAC meetings during the time, and they basically, it's a lot of legislative, and then we talk to all the counties to find out what their concerns are and how we can help them work better. And then we had a childcare meeting yesterday, and there's going to be that Super Sunday coming up in, I want to say September. I've got the date at home, but it's a really great committee that's going to be working on that to see if we can get some more childcare in our county.
And I don't know, I get this IQ magazine. Does everybody get this?
That's awesome. isn't it?
There's an article in here of one of our businesses in Pine County, the Laurie's family in their the Maggi business. Pretty good. Pretty good little magazine. That's all I have. Anybody else got anything? If not, we'll declare the meeting adjourned.
Hell, we-